The Isdal Woman. The mystery of the woman with no name. On a cold November morning in 1970, two hikers walking through a remote valley near Bergen, Norway, noticed something strange. A woman's body was lying among the rocks. She was dead, but almost everything about her seemed designed to make one question impossible to answer. Who was she? There was no passport, no wallet, no identification. The labels had been cut from her clothes, and when investigators began tracing her movements, they discovered that the dead woman appeared to have lived under several different names. Even stranger, she had left behind coded notes, traveled across Europe, and repeatedly changed hotels. More than 50 years later, the identity of the woman found in Norway's Isdalen Valley remains unknown. This is the mystery of the Isdal Woman. On November 29, 1970, two university students were hiking through Isdalen, a remote valley outside Bergen. The area had earned a grim nickname among locals, Death Valley. As they walked through the landscape, they noticed the smell of smoke. Then they saw her. The body of an unidentified woman was lying between some rocks. Nearby were several objects, including bottles and other personal belongings. The police were called. At first, investigators faced what looked like a tragic death. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. The woman was wearing clothing, yet the labels had been removed. Her identity documents were nowhere to be found, and there was no obvious explanation for why she was there. Investigators soon discovered that she had been carrying a number of unusual possessions. Among them were several wigs. There were also cosmetics, prescription medicines, sunglasses, and other items that suggested she had been concerned about her appearance. But perhaps the strangest discovery came when police began examining luggage connected to the woman. Inside were clothing and belongings with labels removed or altered. Some items contained different markings that appeared to have been deliberately changed. It was as though someone had gone through her possessions and tried to erase every clue to where she came from. The police began searching for her identity. Her fingerprints were sent through Norwegian records. Nothing useful came back. Her photograph was shown to the public. Still, no one could tell investigators who she was. Then came an important clue. A suitcase connected to the woman was found at a railway station in Bergen. Inside was a pair of shoes. The soles contained traces that appeared consistent with the same substance found at the scene where her body was discovered. There were also clothing items, cosmetics, and other belongings. But again, the labels had been removed. Investigators were now dealing with a woman who appeared to have deliberately hidden her identity. Then they found something even more intriguing. A notebook contained a series of combinations made up of letters and numbers. At first, they looked meaningless, but investigators believed the letters could correspond to hotel locations, while the numbers could represent dates. When they began comparing the information with hotel records, a disturbing pattern emerged. The woman had apparently traveled extensively, and she had used several different names. Hotel records revealed that she had stayed in multiple locations around Norway. She sometimes registered under names that were later discovered to be false. She also appeared to have traveled outside Norway. Witnesses remembered a woman who spoke several languages. Some described her as elegant and well-dressed. Others remembered unusual behavior. At one point, she reportedly checked into a hotel under a false name and gave an address that did not appear to lead investigators anywhere. She seemed to move from place to place without establishing a permanent home. And then there was the question of why. Was she simply a woman living under an assumed identity? Was she trying to escape someone? Or was there something much more complicated happening? And investigators eventually reconstructed part of her journey. She had stayed in Bergen before her death. She had also traveled to other Norwegian cities. Records suggested she had spent time in Stavanger, Trondheim, and Oslo. She was not simply wandering randomly. She was moving between hotels, changing names, and maintaining a strange degree of secrecy. Then witnesses provided another disturbing detail. The woman had apparently been seen with men who were never conclusively identified. One witness recalled seeing her with a man who appeared to be older. Another remembered a conversation involving a foreign language. None of these details proved that she was involved in espionage. But as the investigation continued, the mystery began to attract speculation. Could the woman have been a spy? The theory became one of the most famous explanations for her strange behavior. But there was a problem. There was no definitive evidence proving it. Then investigators turned their attention to the woman's death. The circumstances were troubling. Her body had been found burned. There were signs that she had been exposed to fire. Several sleeping tablets were also discovered in her system. The investigation concluded that she had likely died from a combination of poisoning and burns. But questions remained. Was her death suicide? Was she murdered? Or was something else responsible? The answer was never firmly established, and the location itself raised more questions. Why would an unidentified woman with multiple aliases travel to a remote valley? Why were the labels removed from her clothing? Why did she possess wigs and disguises? Why did she appear to have used different identities? And why did she leave behind coded information? Every answer seemed to create another question. One of the most haunting aspects of the case was what happened after her death. Police released photographs and descriptions of the woman. People came forward with possible information, but no one could establish her identity. Eventually, authorities buried her in Bergen. She was buried as an unknown woman. No family came forward to claim her. No country officially identified her as a missing citizen. No definitive name was attached to her grave. For decades, that was where the case remained. A woman had appeared in Norway. She had moved through several hotels under false identities. She had traveled internationally. She had hidden clues about herself. And then she died alone in a remote valley, leaving behind almost nothing that could explain who she really was. Over the years, investigators and researchers revisited the case. Advances in forensic science offered new hope. Modern DNA analysis raised the possibility that the Isdal woman might finally be connected to relatives somewhere in the world. Her fingerprints were also compared with records outside Norway, but the answers remained elusive. Researchers have explored possible connections to different European countries. Her accent, language skills, travel history, and appearance have all been examined. Some theories have suggested she may have been from Germany. Others have pointed toward Belgium, France, Eastern Europe, or somewhere else entirely, but none has produced a confirmed identity. And this is where the case becomes especially fascinating, because the Isdal woman did not simply leave behind too few clues. She left behind too many strange clues. Almost every part of her story seems to point somewhere, and yet almost nothing points conclusively to her true identity. The spy theory remains particularly popular. The early 1970s were still shaped by the Cold War. Norway was a NATO member, and Europe was filled with intelligence activity. The woman's multiple identities, foreign travel, coded notes, wigs, and unexplained meetings seemed to fit the image of an undercover operative. Some researchers have even suggested that she may have been involved with intelligence networks, but there is an important distinction. A strange case is not automatically a spy case. There is no conclusive evidence proving that the Isdal woman worked for an intelligence service. Her behavior could have had other explanations. She could have been attempting to hide from someone. She could have been involved in criminal activity. She could have simply been a private person determined to conceal her past. And perhaps the truth was something completely different. There is another possibility that makes the case even more tragic. What if the woman was not trying to hide because she was a spy? What if she was hiding because she was afraid? What if the different names were an attempt to escape a dangerous past? What if someone knew who she was but never came forward? These questions cannot be answered with the evidence we have today. And that is precisely why the Isdal woman continues to fascinate investigators. Her story is not just about a mysterious death. It is about a human being whose identity somehow disappeared. More than half a century has passed since hikers discovered her body. Technology has transformed forensic investigation. DNA databases have grown. Researchers can analyze evidence that investigators in 1970 could barely understand. Yet the central question remains exactly the same. Who was the Isdal woman? She had a name. She had a childhood. She had a family somewhere. Someone knew her voice. Someone knew what she looked like before the wigs and disguises. Someone may have remembered the last conversation they ever had with her, but the world has never been able to connect those memories to the woman found in Isdalen. And perhaps that is the most disturbing part of this entire mystery. She wasn't a legend when she was alive. She was a real person. She walked through European cities. She checked into hotels, she bought things, she spoke to people, she made plans, and then somehow the trail disappeared. Today, the Isdal Woman remains one of Norway's most enduring unsolved mysteries. Her identity is unknown. The exact circumstances of her death remain disputed, and the purpose behind her strange movements, aliases, and coded records may never be fully understood. Maybe she was a spy, maybe she wasn't. Maybe the truth is far more ordinary, or perhaps the real story is something investigators have never even considered. But until someone can finally put a name to the woman found among those rocks in 1970, one question will continue to haunt the Isdal Valley. Who was the woman with no name? And why did she disappear from the world without leaving her identity behind? This is Mystery Vault.